Hello, everyone, and welcome to the first day of the Island Finance Forum. This is the last session of the day, but we will continue tomorrow and on Thursday with more sessions, so look forward to those. Thank you for joining us, and we hope that you have been enjoying the event.
Hello, everyone. Great to see you all here. My name is Stacy Alvarez de la Campa. I'm the community manager here at Island Innovation, and I'm based in Barbados, an island in the Caribbean region.
My name is Christian Sakino. I am the Chief of Staff and Technology Lead here at Island Innovation. I am based in Margarita Island off the coast of Venezuela in the Caribbean region as well.
So we are really happy to be presenting this session. The title of the session is Small and Medium Enterprise SMEs, Building Islands Entrepreneurial Ecosystems. So before we begin, you should see a poll, which should be appearing right about now on your screen. Okay, so, and we want you to let us know where you're connecting from. Okay, so please feel free to use the poll, let us know where you're connecting from and the sector and industry that you belong to.
So while you are responding to the poll, let's speak a little bit about the topic in hand. Small and mid-sized enterprises are businesses that maintain revenues, assets, or a number of employees below a certain threshold. Each country has its own definition of what constitutes a small or medium-sized enterprise. Certain size criteria must be met, and occasionally the industry in which the company operates is taken into account as well.
Okay, so as Christian said, you can see that small and medium-sized enterprises, they do play a really important role in an economy. They employ collectively vast numbers of people, and they help to shape innovation. So they outnumber large firms, definitely in our region, and people are generally very entrepreneurial in nature. And this is something that I think we're going to chat a lot more about in the session, so I look forward to it.
Exactly. Like, for example, SMEs can exist in almost any industry, although they are more likely to reside within industries that require fewer employees or smaller upfront capital investments.
Okay, so at this point, we'd like to invite you to use the chat function. Please introduce yourself, let us know where you're joining from. You know, there you can make any comments that you have in the session. I'm really excited to see who is joining and from where. Already, I can see a nice contingent from the Pacific Islands. We have Tonga saying hi. I have Fiji in the house. That's great. We also have Florida. We have Kingston, Jamaica, Vanuatu, Tanzania, as usual. Oh, the Virgin Islands as well. A great group of people. So please keep it up. Let us know where you're from in the chat.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. Please also make sure that you use the Q&A function for any questions that you may have. We anticipate this session is going to be very interactive, so please add any questions that you have about the topic in hand in the Q&A box, and we will do our best to make sure that we can address as many questions as possible in the panel discussion.
Okay, so at this point, we should have the poll results, Christian, I believe. Are they ready?
Yes, let me just close it and show it on your end. So we have a lot of people coming in from both the Caribbean and also the Pacific region. These are competing for the first spot here. And we also have a lot of people from North America, Europe, and Africa. So thank you so much. We also have people from Asia. We appreciate you getting up early and watching this session. As far as the sector goes, we have the majority of people from the private sector, followed closely by the NGO sector. Academia, government, and other types of sector are also available. And the industry, we have a lot of people from the tourism, management consulting, energy, environmental services, ocean conservation, finance, and agricultural sectors. So thank you so much for your participation.
Yes, thanks. So at this point, we will probably think about small and medium-sized enterprises. As we mentioned, they definitely play a strong role in contributing to economic growth, and not just economic growth, because linked to economic growth, of course, is sustainable employment. And this contribution is really, really evident in the context of some of the layoffs that we've seen in the tech sector. So, and the tech sector particularly, there was quite the boom in the wake of COVID, but we can see that really and truly the underpinnings of a lot of economies, particularly those in smaller islands, are linked to small and medium-sized enterprises.
Exactly. And for example, it's common knowledge that SMEs have a general capacity for flexibility and innovation. So we have a lot of people from SMEs that are driving their forces in their islands about changing things of how they are. Like, for example, structural changes. Adaptation is another thing that SMEs have that you won't find in larger companies, for example, because SMEs are just as rapidly adapting to changing customer taste and demand as larger companies do not. So SMEs play an even more pronounced role in small island territories. They are the driving force of employment. In some cases, they are over 80 or 90% of employment on islands come from SMEs. So we're going to be discussing all of that in this fantastic session. Without further ado, our first speaker, our keynote speaker, is the Honorable Manoa Seru Kamikamika, Minister of Trade, Cooperatives, Small and Medium Enterprises, and also a Deputy Prime Minister at the government of Fiji.
Members of the forum, Nisa Mbunaka, and good morning from Fiji. It is my pleasure to join you virtually, and I am happy to contribute to the discussions. I am sure you all will find this forum both timely and relevant as it aims to generate meaningful dialogues and innovative solutions. I understand there are time limitations, so I will keep my intervention very brief. Ladies and gentlemen, Fiji is made up of 330 islands in the South Pacific, with just less than 1 million in population. According to ADB, Fiji is projected to grow 6% in 2023 and 3% in 2024. This is backed by a 15% growth in 2022. While the central bank mentions that Fiji has high liquidity in our system, however, the challenge is finding ways to unlock the funds and provide confidence to financial institutions to take a bit more risk with responsibility. Ladies and gentlemen, as we are currently recovering from the aftershock of the COVID-19 pandemic, it gives us an opportunity to reset and rethink our economic strategies. Just over the weekend, I had the pleasure of meeting various segments of micro, small, and medium enterprises, MSMEs, who made it clear that more needs to be done in unlocking finance and also improving the ease of doing business. In order to have a truly robust entrepreneurial system in place, governments cannot do it alone. The government's role as policymakers is to create an enabling environment for our businesses and entrepreneurs to prosper. Our business environment must give the private sector and investors the confidence to invest and need the freedom to be innovative. There needs to be a strong working relationship and trust between the private sector and government. And this cannot happen in a heavily regulated environment. In building an entrepreneurial system, the government must have the empathy to listen and the political will to implement changes. Our private sector is continuously calling for the ease of doing business by removing unnecessary regulation and compliance requirements. Yes, laws are important as they set the rules of engagement, but we cannot over-regulate the private sector. There needs to be balance. Secondly, by providing and unlocking the opportunities to easily access low-cost financing, that is why the government of Fiji, through this ministry, has invested more than 102 million in MSMEs in the forms of grants. We have also partnered with the private sector and the banks in developing products that assist and reduce the cost of access to finance for businesses, and particularly during and post the COVID eras. This has come in the form of guarantees, also paying interest components on loans for MSMEs, and wage subsidies. We also need to ensure that there is access to business advisory, upskilling, training, and mentoring opportunities. This empowers and equips our entrepreneurs to learn and understand the basics of doing business and improve their business acumen. As a government, we must invest in the correct infrastructure, whether it's roads, electricity, water, or IT services. These essential infrastructure unlocks economic opportunities for entrepreneurs to expand and diversify. Additionally, it definitely helps when the private sector is able to organize themselves into apex bodies or associations that often can be used as a bridge to lobby and discuss policies with government. However, these associations must be backed by good governance, inclusivity, and the willingness to serve the interests of the industry. Generally, if you have a government willing to listen, one will realize that often the private sector identifies the problems and provides the solutions as well. Ladies and gentlemen, I now wish to share a few insights about bridging the gap to access expert knowledge and financial opportunities. At a national level, our development partners stand ready to always assist us when called upon. However, we take a deep dive into our economic sectors. We are well aware of the financial challenges compounded by non-financial factors as well. Fiji is vulnerable to external shocks such as pandemics, natural disasters, and as policymakers, we need to ensure we have a business environment that is resilient and sustainable. Given our vulnerability and economic risks, government cannot be forking out funds for disaster recovery and climatic events. That is why we have partnered with the UN Capital Development Fund, or UNCDF, in parametric insurance of our MSMEs and community-based businesses. How this basically works is that if a business is impacted by a natural disaster, such as a flood or cyclone, they will receive an immediate payout as insurance to kickstart their recovery process. We need such innovative and tailor-made financing solutions to keep the economy resilient during times of crisis. Our private sector, particularly the MSMEs, have made strong calls to develop green policies. We are also working with donor partners and the private sector in this regard. We have also witnessed firsthand how Fiji businesses that are off the grid use renewable energy and clean energy to actually unlock their economic potential. For instance, by funding solar freezers and cold storage for our businesses in the maritime islands, they are able to catch, store, and preserve their produce, normally fish and root crops, and sell them at a later time. It empowers them to negotiate the true economic value with their customers. Another emerging opportunity that is developing in Fiji is in the area of carbon trading. We have seen how our resource owners who organize themselves formally into cooperatives are able to preserve their natural resources, for instance forests, and subsequently able to sell carbon units to high carbon emitters. While this is a long-term sustainable solution, these cooperatives have also diversified into other revenue streams, such as the production of honey. Ladies and gentlemen, to conclude, I call upon this forum to make use of this platform and determine meaningful outcomes and draw up action plans to be implemented. We all have a responsibility to ensure that we progress the development of our nations. We must continue to work together and share ideas. I thank you for the invitation to be part of this forum. Thank you, and winakapakalebo.
Thank you so much to the Honorable Manoa Seru Kamika, Minister of Trade, Cooperatives, Small and Medium Enterprises, and also Deputy Prime Minister at the Government of Fiji, for his keynote speech. And greetings to all Fijians here that I see on the chat. We have a lot of people from Fiji. All right, so coming up next, we have Michael Galea, the Managing Director of GGS Ltd at Malta, and also the President of the Gozo Business Chamber of Commerce.
Christian, I want to start by thanking you and Island Innovation for inviting the Chamber of SMEs in Malta to participate on your forum. As a chamber, we represent the majority of SMEs in Malta and Gozo. We are a very active business organization and have representation on most fora of the country and even strong presence at EU level. We are very active when it comes to dialogue with politicians also. We constantly push our agenda and negotiate on behalf of our members. By way of introduction, Malta is a very small nation located in the Mediterranean Sea, south of Sicily and east of Tunisia. We have a rich history with evidence of human habitation dating back 7,000 years. Over the centuries, Malta was ruled by a variety of powers, including Phoenicians, Romans, Arabs, the Knights of St. John, the French, and even more recently by the British. Malta gained independence in 1964 and became a republic in 1974. The Maltese population is just over 500,000 people. Malta is a very popular tourist destination thanks to our warm climate, beautiful beaches. We are very rich in culture also, and the people of Malta are very hospitable. The capital city of Malta is Valletta. It's a UNESCO World Heritage Site and is home for numerous museums, galleries, and also historic sites. Malta is a member of the European Union and has a stable democracy. The official languages are Maltese and English, and we have a highly educated workforce. In recent years, Malta has become known as a hub for technology and gaming companies, and it's also developed a strong financial sector. In terms of SMEs, Malta has a thriving entrepreneurial community with a number of initiatives in place to support small and medium businesses. Now, small and medium enterprises play a significant role in Malta's economy, accounting most probably to over 90% of all the businesses in the country. The majority of the SMEs are in the services sector, particularly in areas like tourism, retail, financial services. While some other businesses are locally owned, there are also a significant number of foreign-owned companies operating in Malta. The process of registering a company in Malta is relatively straightforward and can be completed in a few days. However, the timeline may vary depending on the complexity of the business structure and any additional requirements that need to be met. The Malta Business Registry is the entity responsible for registrations of new companies. Now, there are several benefits of having a company in Malta, which include taxation benefits. Malta is renowned as one of the EU states that has the lowest net effective tax rates. It offers a vast array of investments opportunities to both EU and non-EU investors. The Malta tax refund system is very popular. Basically, a company in Malta pays 35% on trading profits. However, if the owner of the company set up in Malta is not a resident or domiciled in Malta, they can generally recover 6/7 of the aforementioned tax, meaning a net effective tax rate of 5%. Another important strength in Malta, I think, is the location, which is Malta is located in the crossroads between Europe and North Africa. So it makes it an ideal location for businesses to expand into these markets also. Another huge strength is a highly skilled and educated workforce, particularly in areas such as finance, IT, and even engineering. Malta has a pro-business environment with a political stability and also a stable economic climate, making it an attractive location also for foreigners to come and invest here. In addition, we also have in Malta a range of funding options available to businesses, including grants, loans, venture capitals. The government has also set up several initiatives to support the startups and SMEs. The Malta Startup Residence Program grants 3 years residence permit, extendable for another 5 years. Beneficiaries to this program need to have a tangible presence in Malta. That means they have to pay taxes in Malta and also live in Malta. For an individual to be eligible for the Startup Residence Program, one must have a number of requirements. For example, has to have a concrete intention to develop business in Malta, has to be an owner of the enterprise, has to be a third country national, meaning not a citizen of the EU, have no criminal record, must not have previously had applications for the resident status or citizenship rejected in Malta or abroad. Now, I think it is important to note that Malta has several benefits in business location. There are some considerations that one has to keep in mind, and these include, for example, competition. Malta is a very small country and has a limited market, which means businesses may face significant competition from other companies in the same sector. Though in this case, this would apply to companies, for example, who are operating locally. Malta has a relatively small domestic market, so SMEs may need to focus on exporting to achieve growth. The availability of funding for SMEs in Malta also can be limited due to the fact that Malta has a very small market. Companies operating in Malta must comply with a range of local regulations, including those related to taxation, employment, and health and safety. While English is widely spoken in Malta, the country's official language is Maltese, which may present a barrier at times for some businesses. Infrastructure in Malta also can be a challenge, particularly in terms of traffic congestion and public transport. Now, to conclude, SMEs in Malta play a crucial role in our economy. Obviously, SMEs, as we said earlier, account to over 98% of all the businesses and employ around 70% of the private sector workforce. Setting a company in Malta can offer many benefits. As I have just outlined in this presentation, Malta has a supportive ecosystem for SMEs with a range of initiatives in place to help businesses grow and succeed. The Maltese government is committed to fostering a business-friendly environment, and it has made significant investment in infrastructure, education, innovation to support SMEs. However, it is important to carefully consider the various factors involved and seek professional advice before making any decisions. Thank you for listening to me and hope you have a fantastic conference. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Michael, for that remarkable speech. And it's nice to hear from the Maltese perspective. And we will have more coming up from Malta. But first, Stacey, I would like to introduce Irene Olkaril, who is the founder of Palau Entrepreneurs for Growth. So Irene, would you mind opening your video?
Thank you, Christian. So I want to wish everyone a very warm welcome to this Island Innovation, to our forum. It's a wonderful opportunity for all of us to share. I do believe it's also very timely at the close of the huge pandemic. It is a really good time for all these island states to finally get an opportunity to share the challenges we've been through and what we can do and to work together going into the future. So a little bit about myself. I consider myself an entrepreneur at heart. I'm a small business owner, and I work mostly around the tourism industry in Palau, which is a very small country. Palau is officially now called the Republic of Palau. It's also historically known as Belau. It's an island country, a microstate in the Western Pacific Ocean. We're very close to the equator, so we're part of the North Pacific. We're also part of the Micronesian group of islands, which is located most western towards Asia. So we are in what we consider a very strategic location at this time, with considering what's happening globally in the world and in the Indo-Pacific area. The Republic of Palau consists of around 340, 350 islands. It's a group of islands that are sort of located in an archipelago shape, kind of thrust in the middle of the Pacific Ocean, a bit away from its neighboring federated states of Micronesian islands. Out of all the islands, only 5 of the 350 islands of Palau are inhabited. We consider ourselves also a large ocean state because we have much more ocean. What we call our Palau Marine National Marine Sanctuary, it's quite large around us, and the islands themselves are very small. We also have a small population of less than 20,000 people, and the total area of the land that we live on is around 466 square kilometers. It's actually I would say in the islands of Palau, everyone knows everyone because it's so small and the population is small, and you can drive, if you're on the big island, you can drive from like the south to the north in less than an hour. And so it is quite a small island. It was discovered by Westerners in late 1873, around that time. Then it was colonized by the Spaniards, and then the Germans, and then the Japanese. And then after World War II, we became a trust territory of the Pacific Islands, administered by the United States of America. So the islands of Palau, with the way our history goes, it's been found that we are a 3,000-year-old culture and indigenous peoples. However, we have been mixed with so many different countries that it is currently a melting pot, I would say, of many ethnicities who call themselves Palauans. It's a growing young country that became independent with its Compact of Free Association with the United States on October 1st, 1994. Part of being a small developing island state, a large ocean state, the Republic of Palau with its small population has always strived to retain its indigenous culture, and especially working towards continuing its environmental protection of its little island chain. We are huge on our ocean conservation, as well as doing our best to develop the jungles and the beaches and the variety of island nature on land that we so call home. And this opportunity to share is really important to me, and I thank those who have organized the Island Innovation Finance Forum, because I realized that MSMEs, micro, small, and medium enterprises in the islands of Palau have always been a part of our culture since the beginning. But as we grew as a country, an independent country, since 1994, we've been getting help from the United States, and somehow that help has been going into the government operations, and the private sector has sort of been not forgotten, but sort of like neglected a bit on the side. And I would say that the COVID pandemic, almost 3 years of when we've been lacking airplanes, tourism, visitors, the islanders themselves have started to recognize how important their farms, their little fisheries, and also the talents of each individual entrepreneur, such as music and craft, art, creative entrepreneurship, and ecopreneurship, agripreneurship, aquapreneurship, all these micro, small, and medium enterprises have come together to seek help from the government. And we are still dealing with a lot of challenges up to now. And so it is really a pleasure for me to share with everyone, and hoping that I could learn from the other speakers, the other participants of this forum, on how to help our little islands of Palau. This year, I had founded, along with 6 other people, so there are 7 board members who created these Palau Entrepreneurs for Growth. Now, the reason we did this is I had learned from being the president and vice president of the Palau Chamber of Commerce before COVID and at the start of the COVID pandemic, that our economic driver in Palau was #1, tourism. And the people who had become the biggest contributors to the tourism industry had been built over the last couple of decades by big investors, big companies from outside. And as they joined into the tourism industry, slowly the indigenous islanders who had really started the tourism industry 30 years ago started to, out of competition, started to sort of die out. And the few bigger companies took over, and that had created a big challenge of where the equitable distribution of wealth from the tourism industry was falling into. Was it falling into the islands of Palau, or was it trickling outside? And from my research and experience of leading the Palau Chamber of Commerce for a couple of years, I saw that it was very important especially during the pandemic, to include MSMEs. And so that challenge became even more important as we looked into the digital era and Palau being connected to the rest of the world. There were young people who were very digital savvy. And how do we connect them to the older people who were running their farms and their small fisheries, their small little mom and pop stores? How do we connect the generations into the business community to work together? And that was the inspiration to start the Palau Entrepreneurs for Growth. So at this point in time, I would say the business community in Palau, with its small population of around 18,000, the bigger picture of the business community is a little over 2,100 MSMEs. And the Chamber of Commerce, with its small 15 members, are really the big hotel owners and a couple of big tour operators or the fuel distributors, oil industries. And with that knowledge, it has really encouraged me to seek ways to help our small and medium, micro, small and medium businesses, the entrepreneurs, all of the various kinds of entrepreneurs. And I've become very focused on seeking help and assistance to promote entrepreneurial programs and training opportunities in Palau, and looking for ways to get assistance. I've been in conversation and meetings with bigger organizations like the United States Department of Agriculture and the UN agencies, and anyone I could speak with to try and seek assistance to help micro, small, and medium businesses in Palau, to not only support the startups that are just coming about, but to provide assistance to the existing businesses that are trying to grow and develop. We find that when COVID caused Palau to have a lockdown and planes couldn't come in, tourism businesses, both big and small companies, were literally closed. We found that the economy, the domestic economy within the island, was becoming more dependent on the micro, small, and medium enterprises. For the community to be able to survive, diversification was starting to bloom outside of only tourism. We became more aware that it was really important to secure our food security by supporting farms, and aquaculture entrepreneurs were also becoming more strong. And how do we enable our small business community to provide made in Palau, produced in Palau products and services? Locally made products and services became very important. And so we've been really challenged by a lot, because for so many years since we became independent, more of the population was employed by the government. And so being employed by the government, depending on funding coming from outside, when it became apparent that if the ships don't come in, it doesn't matter if you get help from outside, that doesn't feed you. Just money and capital is important, but it doesn't feed the population inside. So more of the government's attention became crucial on the private sector, and growing and developing and supporting entrepreneurs, the different types of entrepreneurs. We still have a lot of challenges in Palau, like dealing with labor and workforce issues, because we're a small population and it's not enough to do all the work. So we have had to improve our labor laws and regulations to be able to bring in labor from other countries nearby Palau, Asian countries, and the nearby Micronesian, and also people from outside like Europe and the US who want to come to Palau and work. We've had to improve our laws to make it possible. And we continue to be excited, although we're challenged, to work in ways that we can have our culture be a part of our business, and to preserve not only our environment, but also preserve our culture. It is a very interesting culture for those who would be hopefully interested to visit Palau. It is a culture of at least 3,000 years old. There are things, practices that we still carry on in Palau that are not happening in other parts of the world, which is a very interesting part of being a visitor to Palau and also working in Palau to get to be a part of that culture and cultural heritage. And so I'm really happy to be a part of this finance forum, and I'm very open to any questions. You know, as we discuss and help one another, I am confident I will take a lot, and that will help as we deal with the challenges of growing MSMEs in Palau at this time. Thank you very much.
Oh my goodness, no, thank you, Irene. This is a fantastic information that you gave us. It was really wonderful to see mention made of that intersection between boosting economic resilience and maintaining and preserving the indigenous culture that is part of Palau. I loved your mention of like aquapreneurship and the creative element of entrepreneurship, that we can have what we refer to as the orange economy. How can we use the creative arts and creative culture and heritage to boost economic resilience? Thank you for that. And I think one of the things that will definitely stay with me is your sentiment that you cannot eat money. It's all well to be earning money, but we need to boost our economies through sustainable agricultural practices, and then also the intergenerational knowledge exchange that can be done through that. So thanks very much for shedding light on the importance of not just small and medium enterprises, but micro, small, and medium-sized enterprises. Thank you so much. So on that note, we're going to go ahead and hear from Mr. Alessandro Silvestri. He is the managing partner of Malta Accelerate. Mr. Silvestri, the floor is yours. We look forward to hearing what you have to say today.
Hello. Hi everybody. Thank you, Stacy. First of all, I would like to thank Island Innovation for giving me possibility to take part to this very exciting forum. And since, as usual, time is our enemy, I will try to keep this introduction as brief as possible, because I'd like to leave space to all of you and to address as many of your questions as possible. Now, I've been supporting and advising SMEs for over 20 years, working between academia and consultancy across various sectors of industry and different countries. I advised and supported policymakers in developing policies to effectively support SMEs growth and ecosystem development. I currently advise SME strategy and internationalization, and share my experience with the startup entrepreneurs and policymakers. Now, since, as I just mentioned, the time we have available is limited, I would like to give as much space as possible to your questions. But before that, I would like only to share with you all a little bit of food for thoughts. Only a couple of points. First point, as Irene mentioned, I would like to highlight the importance of using the term MSMEs rather than SMEs, because all state islands, and not only, also other countries which are not islands, have developed over the centuries thanks to micro businesses. So we need to give micro businesses the support, the value that they do deserve. Second point I would like to share with you is the necessity to have in place willingness and coordination. Willingness and coordination of those actors that are key to developing and preserving healthy entrepreneurial ecosystems. And from my previous experiences, I noticed that three among the key stakeholders that make a difference when it comes to developing healthy entrepreneurship ecosystems are public sector, first of all, universities, and social parties. So I would like now to hear some of your questions. I would be delighted to address any of your points, considerations, and reply to any questions.
Okay, thanks so much, Alessandro. Okay, so I do see a number of really interesting questions in the chat. Let me start with one that is from Carolyn. So Carolyn has asked or mentioned that not all businesses have tangible products that can be exported. And this actually links to Irene's point about culture being an asset. So how do you propose that small businesses kind of navigate that if they do have a business that has to do with the performing arts or culture? How do they achieve financial sustainability in the long term? Irene, you can take if you want to go at it first, and then we'll have Alessandro.
I'd be very happy to. That's an excellent question. One of the things that I see as a possibility to resolve that challenge is by looking for ways to connect our younger generation with the older generation through technology. So what I've tried to do in Palau is convincing the grassroots, like the women who are farmers, like, please don't shun away your grandson or your granddaughters because they're on their computer and they want to do technology. Try and have them be a part of your business. Have them create a platform to sell your taro or your fish. They go on Facebook and in 10 minutes they have hits like, where's the fish? How much is it? How many pounds? Where's the taro? Where can I get it? I need a transportation. So that is one of the ways that I have found is something very important in Palau. And I hope that it can be applied also in other island countries. We are part of the global economy now, and our children, the younger generation, especially when they are schooled and educated in outside of Palau, we only have a 2-year college, but even the little 2-year community college, they learn all these digital technology, not all of them, but they are inclined to be interested, the younger generation. And instead of complaining, why is my grandson and granddaughter not working in the farm with me today? You know, how about integrating them into the family operations and have them learn management skills using technology? It's not only good for marketing the products and services, it is also very ideal in having a family, growing a family business, which is in the heart of all startups and all MSMEs. You don't want to just be alone by yourself. I think I mentioned earlier, especially if you're born and raised in the island, you're born and raised knowing that you can take yourself outside of the island and go to America to study in college, but you can never take that island out of you. You always will long and be homesick for the beach, for the ocean, for that tasty fish and taro that you know. You cannot get it out of your, human senses. So let's try and see how we can combine the younger and the older generation living in an island and accept that technology is now a part of our businesses. Embrace how they can be a part of the family business and help one another to overcome the challenges.
Thank you for that. Alessandro, did you have anything to add to that?
No, basically, I entirely agree with Irene. I mean, I remember 25 to 30 years ago, we used to support internationalization of creative industries, export of creative industries, by setting up bulky stands in trade fairs on the other side of the planet, which was a very time-consuming and a costly effort. Nowadays, as Irene mentioned, with technology, really we can do it in a comfortably and relatively inexpensive manner from our home, basically. So we should effectively embrace new technologies to export and promote our local cultural and creative industries.
Thank you so much, Alessandro, for your remarks. And one of the other questions, and we have plenty of questions, so we're definitely going to extend the session a few minutes, if that's okay with you both. We have a question from Jeff Millanet. One of the factors is the mindset of the entrepreneur. Many times working with small island development states entrepreneurs, I am reminded of the need of them to have an international business plan. For example, recognition. In order to scale, they must have a plan to expand to other markets, etc. One way of exploring that concept is to establish soft landings, programs with entrepreneur support organization in new markets. Do any of these programs are available, whether it's on Malta for you or in Palau for you, Irene?
Yes, we have a number of programs to support MSMEs to go international, and actually Malta is one of the countries in Europe with the largest set of programs to support growth and internationalization of MSMEs. And these programs include, for example, support to go abroad to take part to trade fairs, conferences, but also to engage consultants for market research, for strategy development, for training. So yes, definitely MSMEs based on islands, they do need more support than SMEs from larger continental countries to go international. So I presume that also in Palau you have similar situation, Irene. So it's all down to basically business support services from the government.
Mhm. Yes, I agree with Alessandro. In Palau, it's slightly different because it's a very small population, and the majority before COVID, the majority, you could just tell all of the studies that were done by the World Bank and IMF, majority of our people were employed by the government. So the idea of entrepreneurship although it was ingrained in the culture long time ago before any airplane or ship arrived on the island, that was kind of getting forgotten. So it was important to restart, inspire and motivate and get that spirit back. So trainings for entrepreneurial programs, I have been very blessed to be a part of the national state workforce development boards, working with leadership, representing the private sector to convince them, please, you need to also provide opportunities for entrepreneurial trainings.
Yeah.
And of course, in the beginning, sometimes you have those who don't believe. I have, in fact, a minister who is a cousin. We're a very small country, so we grow up, we know each other, and he often says to me, "Oh, Irene, entrepreneurs are born, they are not made." And I said, well, we can agree to disagree. Sometimes environmental factors, social impacts cause people to just go and get a job instead of, starting what their passion is. And let's take an artist, for example, or someone who is creating music. Of course, they're going to go and be a waiter at the restaurant because what is there to support their music or their art? They need to also be able to have, a livelihood. So the government has started, in fact, just last year, they started to give like small grants, $10,000 each to group like cooperatives who are doing farming or who are doing fishing, or cooperatives who are helping find ways for the disabled persons to be able to do, sewing and other handicrafts, things that they can do. And I'm very happy to know that we've woken up to the realization that we need to support entrepreneurs and people with a heart to just want to do something that they know their talents lie around those work-related gifts that they can do to produce products and or services. For example, I have a group of young men. They're looking for something to do. So I said, why don't you get together and you offer your services to harvest coconuts? Not everybody can go and, the coconuts are high, you need safety harnesses. So trying to give them support like that and help them come up with their little business plan from the development bank to start services like that is also something. It's needed. The hotels, of course, would ask, oh, our guests are unable to go and lounge around the lawn because they're scared the coconuts fall on their heads. Well, we have a group of young men. They offer services. Why don't you pay them to harvest the coconuts regularly? So little examples like that. I also would like to share that I was so inspired by this, that in the beginning of 2021, I took one of my commercial spaces and I renovated it a little and turned it into an incubator. I think in some countries they call it an accelerator, but I called it an incubator. I named it Dodior. It's in Palawan language. It means we work. And I, of course, did a little research to learn from the big companies like WeWork, and then just made a place where the entrepreneurs can come because they cannot afford an office space. So now they have a place where they can share the internet. They have a little refrigerator, there's snacks, water filtration. We have rules because we're very big on environmental protection. No plastics, bring your own mug, your own, water bottle, flask. So little things that you can do to provide that support is very, very important to overcome challenges.
I would like also to add to what Irene mentioned, that it is extremely important in order to create an effective entrepreneurial culture, to start from young age, from high school, from college, just the basics, how to prepare a presentation to pitch to potential investors, what are the basic elements of a business plan, how would you manage a project to develop a new product, just the basics. But that helps already to change, to create that mindset in a 15, 16, 17 years old young person, in order to enable them to follow their path and realize their dreams, achieve their objectives if they wish to.
Mm-hmm. I agree. I often say to young people that I mentor, or when I go do some entrepreneurship talks in high schools, I often say to them that there is a difference between just being a business person, a businessman or businesswoman, and being an entrepreneur. And being an entrepreneur, you put your heart into it. You are willing to take a risk, to do what you love and turn it into a livelihood.
That's a very, very good point. I love the point you make about it's the importance of taking risk. And I think linked to that, we have a couple of questions in the chat that mention the role of youth and how can we look at youth's passions? How can they be harnessed? I know that you partially answered that question when you mentioned that example of young men, who could pick coconuts. And if there's a liaison or an ally in, the private sector who can help young people to really fine tune their talents, that space that you provide for young people, I think that provides a good example of answering that question. I wanted to go on actually and just mention another question. Someone has asked in the chat the role that gender plays in all of this. To what extent are you thinking about the specific circumstances, say, that might differentiate men and women as entrepreneurs, and what can we do to put focus on that? Irene, you can go ahead and have Alessandro.
Thank you, Stacy. I am very happy to share that Palau is one of the few matriarchal societies in the world. The women may be silent, but they have a big decision-making power and authority. However, we need to also educate our young women to use that to develop and grow and support businesses, their own entrepreneurship passions. Instead of women thinking, oh, well, I can inherit a land from my mother because we're matriarchal society. So whatever I do, I will always have a land to have a house on. How do you make that land, which is a blessing through your mother to you, to be a blessing to other people? You create a business using that land, and you can be able to bless other people by selling your product or services from that land. So a lot of Palauan young women who were never really interested in business and just thought, oh, I could just be employed and have a job, they're now starting, especially young people, and I'm very proud of them, that they're starting to know, oh, I can bake cupcakes. I can take orders and bake at home, and I can go get my health certificate and be able to sell what I bake, what I cook, or, using whatever resources they have. And so the gender issue in Palau has always been sort of misunderstood, because people think, oh, well, you're a matriarchal society, you know, so I guess the women can just have power to do what they like. But no, they need to know that what they have can be turned into something that can also contribute to the society, the community, and to their families, of course. And now we have the internet, they can learn about possibilities of export. You know, there are coconut oils. I have entrepreneurs who are they take taas or coconut. There are plants in Palau that you can make medicinal oils from, and coconut oil products. And we learned also from other countries like Fiji and other countries. And so women and men both, and we also are very open now to help other gender-based issues where, you know, you have to include everyone. Even if you're born a man and you feel like a woman, or you're born a woman and you feel like a man, it's okay. We all are meant to do something with our lives. So gender can go far. We have to be inclusive to everyone.
Yes, thank you for that. Alessandro, did you have any thoughts there you wish to add?
Yeah, well, I think that gender issues are very much linked to each different culture, society, countries, history. So I can tell you about my personal experience. I've been mentoring startup entrepreneurs for many years in many different countries with very different cultures from each other. But from my point of view, I've always dealt with women and men entrepreneurs in the same way. For me, gender has never been an issue. There's never been an issue, gender. I mentored the extremely capable women entrepreneurs that achieved great successes as entrepreneurs and as mothers and wives at the same time. Incredibly difficult job, as well as mentoring extremely capable men. So as far as I'm concerned, gender is not an issue. Everybody with the right support can reach the sky, basically.
Fantastic. That was remarkable, Alexandra. I think that we can all agree here in the panel that regardless of your background, your race, your gender, the world is your oyster, right?
Yes.
So it depends on you to generate all of the possibilities that, for example, if you don't see them in your future, try to look further ahead and ask questions to the people that know more. And it's wonderful to have these accelerator programs like the ones that you have in Palau and in Malta. That can be an example for other regions in the globe. As for example, as we see here in the Caribbean, we have some accelerators in climate, but there should also be accelerators for entrepreneurs. And I think that's the milestone that we are looking forward to. So we have several questions. So I'm going to try to condense a couple of them in just one. We have one from Joshua Matuai, directed to you, Irene. Is there a land or a barrier of growth for Palau's businesses?
Very good question. One of the biggest challenges we have in Palau for businesses to develop, especially startups, entrepreneurs who really have something to offer but have difficulty, is due to land disputes. So our culture is based on lands are usually owned by a clan. I'm not sure if it's similar in Malta, but we often relate to Italy as we have something in common with them. We are part of a big family clan. And so sometimes it's difficult when a clan owns the land and then you try to make it possible. Let's say someone wants to have a livestock farm or a chicken farm. They often have to, find a way to convince the family, the clan, that this land is ideal to start a small business growing livestock or chickens, which, everyone loves to eat, but sometimes they forget that we need to support the person who is raising these things or taking care of the food, growing food to feed the community. And that is the challenge in Palau. Land ownership and land disputes can be a way that makes it difficult for entrepreneurs. It was never like this before. Culturally, we have a clan system. If you're from a high clan, it is your responsibility to provide land to the people in the low clan to grow things, and so the society can function with producers being supported by not having to purchase a land, but having been given a land to work on, or part of a coastal area to fish or things of that sort. But as we venture to become an independent country with an influence from the Western world, sometimes that can make it hard, because now you have, lands, you have to have a title and a piece of paper, right? And how do they get to that piece of paper, to the certificate of title? They have to have all these discussions and lawyers and involved in how to segregate and make the land clear, so an entrepreneur can come in and say, I can start a business. And the challenges of land disputes is one of our biggest in Palau.
Fantastic, thank you so much. And we are closing in. We are going to select 2 more questions for both of you and then close off the panel. So I invite my colleague Stacy to select one, and I will select another one to share with you.
Sure, no problem at all. Well, I do see a question here. The idea of intellectual property, quality, and equity, how can we factor that into advocacy and support for entrepreneurs? That's a question to both of you. Alessandro, you can go first, and then we'll have it.
Can you repeat, please? Can you repeat?
The question is, how can we take into account intellectual property, quality, and equity, and have that as a part of supporting entrepreneurs in their quest to build their businesses?
Well, first of all, it is necessary to have in place the right and effective legislative frameworks. First. Second, it is necessary to have in place the right experts to share their expertise with entrepreneurs in the form of training, as Irene mentioned, in the form of coaching, sharing case studies. Once you have the right legislation in place and the right effective business support services and effective frameworks to share expertise with the entrepreneurs, as many of us do with our acceleration activities, and then you have the basic elements in place to enable entrepreneurs to effectively pursue their objectives.
Great, thank you so much for that. Irene, would you like to answer that?
Yes, that's another excellent question. I believe it's a challenge in almost every small developing country, including islands. I agree with Alessandro, it requires a legislative framework. So in Palau, for example, when an entrepreneur creates something, they deserve to have a copyright to what they create. Due to COVID, when the legislators in Palau, our little national Congress, had a bit more time to focus inward into the domestic economy and what was happening in the country, it was an opportunity where people like myself and like-minded people wanted to use the opportunity to push for help to create laws to protect entrepreneurs. We continue to, help create like a cooperative, for example, for the artists and the musicians. But then, lawmaker says, well, they have to pay $200 to have a copyright certificate to their work. So we, of course, we would write a letter, we get a petition if we need to, people to sign, and we approach Congress and say, bring it down to $40. So there are ways to help, but the entrepreneurs themselves, I tell you, most entrepreneurs, they are focused, they have the willingness to do what they love, but they need support when it comes to legislative frameworks. They really need support, and the better the groups and innovations and incubators, accelerators, and even forums like this are so helpful to get the entrepreneurs thinking, yes, intellectual property rights are important. We need that. We need copyrights, we need patents, we need something that protects our work. I had one entrepreneur, he was an older gentleman. He says, well, I sold my storyboards at the National Museum, but I was upset and I went and asked to get back some of my storyboards because I don't think that they have protection that somebody tried to copy my work and do it on ceramics instead of wood. So it sounds like it's a little problem, but it's actually huge for him. It's huge. The value, the worth of his time and work to create something so beautiful that visitors are willing to pay $1,000 for. Why is it that inside our own country, we cannot support his patent to that work, his copyright, his trademark? So I agree with Alessandro, legislative framework.
And
Yes.
ideally, if I may add just one very, very brief point, ideally, even to go one step further and provide support, financial support to entrepreneurs, micro businesses, to pay the IP specialist, the legal offices, which most of the times are very expensive,
Yes.
to do the IP check, IP mapping, IP strategy, and IP registration.
Exactly. I think that's an excellent point for us to begin to round up the discussion on, because the last question kind of focuses on that. The idea of how can we support certain businesses. There's some startups that often they have no collateral that would be accepted by a banking institution. So, that dimension of tapping into young people and using tech for sustainability. Can we have a last couple of words on that? Irene, you can go first, and then we'll have it.
I'm actually tying that up with another questions, or trying to log them all into one, because we have plenty on the Q&A. Thank you to all our patient audience. The barriers by regulators, how do you cope with that? And how do you tell the younger generation, hey, you need to learn about this from the schools, as you mentioned before, Alessandro and Irene?
Okay, great question. Yes, it ties up to the previous question. It is very important to have support from expertise, from experts, people who are experts. So for example, in Palau, when I was unable, because I'm not a lawyer, I was unable to provide the knowledge and the expertise. What I did is I went, you know how lawyers, sometimes they have to have a certain number of pro bono hours?
Yes.
Well, I went and found the corporate lawyer, someone who could come and be in the, the space that I've provided, and the group of entrepreneurs sit around the table while we put it on the screen. The legal work that we are forming their cooperative so they can share a facility to have a studio on one side and put their equipment and tools on the other side. They, of course, understand the physical part of their work, but they don't quite understand why and how we have to have an entity, a legal entity, so they can be protected with their products, what they're doing, and how they sell it, and how they could be licensed, registered businesses. So this lawyer that I brought in would sit there and would explain all of the incorporation documents and talk with them about the specifics of what each entrepreneur is doing, like let's say a pottery maker and a bonsai grower. They're all various different business types and entrepreneurships, but there is one common ground that they can share, and that is a legal framework that will strengthen their group as an entity. So what they do individually can be more productive and cost effective, because they have a shared space where they can keep their supplies. They have a shared studio, kind of like the incubator provide for them to come in and learn how to apply for a business license, how to, ask questions, whether they have to pay taxes, how much. You bring in the experts to them. What we find in Palau is the entrepreneurs will not go out to look for those experts because they don't know to begin with that they need them. So it takes, we say it takes a village to to raise a child. Well, it takes a village to develop and grow an entrepreneur, especially the young people. So that's what we do, little ways that we can help. You seek expertise and you get people in a room or in a place where they can all get the same consistent information and find ways to learn and to strengthen their businesses, micro, small, medium businesses.
That's a great point. I think that's fantastic because you show us the necessity for there to be that entrepreneurial mentorship and the knowledge sharing, and little things can go such a long way to help.
Yes.
So on that note, I have to say thanks so much to both of you and to everyone for attending. Christian, I'll lead it over to you to close the session.
Thank you, Stacy, and thank you, Irene, Alessandro, and also to the Honorable Minister and Michael for their interventions, and to our esteemed audience that has stayed with us so long. We have extended the session for 25 more minutes, which is quite a lot. So we appreciate you staying here, given the time. So without further ado, I will bid you adieu and see you tomorrow for day 2 of the Island Finance Forum. Our next session is going to be financing the renewable energy transition in islands. And that one is coming up at 4 p.m. Sydney time, 7 a.m. London, and 2 a.m. New York. All right. So thank you, everyone, for your wonderful contributions. The chat has been very active. There are even people from different perspectives answering about copyright law, about institutions. So thank you. You have been amazing.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ceci. Thank you, Christian.
You guys are welcome.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you so much.
Bye, Irene.
See you next time.
Bye.